Hi, this is Mia Neese. This is Unit 2, Project Milestone. What a College Education Buys by Chris Caldwell. Oral Communication. Today is June 2nd, 2019. So I went and found Caldwell's original text, which appeared in February 25th, 2007 edition of the New York Times. And what was interesting about that is that he opens the work with two paragraphs that are descriptive of the political climate at the time. He refers to having heard a Republican State Department counselor suggest that college was more important than peace in the Middle East, and also referred to a Democratic Party promise to reduce interest rates on college loans, all of which was received bipartisan support. He sets the stage basically claiming that college and access to a tertiary education is something that everyone should have and everyone should do, and we should make it equally accessible to anyone who wants to enter. Um, Caldwell then proceeds to argue against that, as he believes that only about 15% of people are actually capable of going to college, intellectually speaking, and he claims that American colleges, in the scheme of things, prepare us for very little. So my thesis is that I'm actually in agreement with Caldwell that there is a challenge with return on investment, particularly in certain types of undergraduate degrees, particularly the liberal arts. But however, I don't agree that only 15% of the population is intellectually capable of making it through college. I think it's far more than that. And furthermore, I would argue that putting more people into programs that will give them a strong foundation in the new information economy is really, really key. I think we need to continue to invest in our workforce as we're seeing the fourth industrial revolution with artificial intelligence and machine learning unfold. And you can see this in an interesting article in Forbes magazine where Bill Maher said that because of what's happening in the context of science or technology, we may well see a job market of kind of the haves and have-nots, and I think we're seeing that already to some extent. And so I think it's really key that we continue to invest in college programs, both undergraduate and postgraduate, but they need to be aligned with what the industry demand is of the day. And very specifically now, we're seeing a huge demand for artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, statistics, bioinformatics, etc. I don't think we're producing anywhere near enough talent to serve the market. What was very almost comical about Caldwell's suggestion was that people have an ulterior motive to going to college. I think he called it that it's the matchmaking ground, the best matchmaking ground, which is really a very antiquated and in the margins quite a sexist notion, in that women in particular go to colleges to find suitable husbands. And this may have been the case in the 50s and 60s, but as you can see from the census data in the table below, the average age when people are marrying is getting later and later. In fact, several years after people exit college, implying that people are now finding mates not in the college setting, but more frequently in the workplace or online. What we are seeing, though, is a really strong demand for the most prestigious colleges, including the most prestigious programs. And we have a limited supply, and what that basically means is that market dynamics are taking place, and we are seeing a steep increase in fees year over year. Caldwell states that there is a 50% difference in earnings between college graduates and those that didn't complete college. And if you look at the Pew Research data in the table on the right, you'll also see that a college degree, while it used to be, more of an insurance policy in the 70s against poverty, now we're seeing, 6% of college graduates still living, below the poverty line, and 15% of people who are below the poverty line actually have some kind of degree. and 22% actually have high school. So, this is really concerning, and I think points to the fact that we need to be investing more in college education, specifically as it's aligned to boosting people's earning capacity. Caldwell brings up another point, which I think is also a little bit simplistic, in that the college degrees for some of the most lucrative industries, so for example, the social media industry or the tech industry, where people who would have gone to colleges when those companies were forming could not have possibly learned about those types of business processes or those types of technologies. But while I say that, I agree the concept is logical at high level, there are foundational elements that individuals learn in college that helped create and propel those industries forward. So I'll give an example. The human genome wasn't mapped until 2002. And so if, according to Caldwell, people couldn't learn about the genome before that, they would now be basically obsolete or redundant within their roles. And that's not the case at all. Clearly, they've taken their knowledge of biology and genetics and other omics and have built on that knowledge. Physicians are another one. They basically spend roughly 10 years between undergraduate and exiting residency in school, and during that time there are always innovations and new medicines coming forth, and if they were expecting to rely on everything to be learned in college, that's simply not possible. Yet they still function, and they have an industry that incorporates innovation into clinical practice every day. Caldwell does distinguish between what he calls civilized education versus a qualified one, which is something that I do agree with. There is a concept of going to a liberal arts college in order to learn how to think and kind of expand one's horizons, which I think is lovely, albeit a little bit of a it poorly equips people to deal with the workplace. Versus some of the other vocational trainings like a computer science degree or a software engineering degree or an accounting degree that actually do give people a specific vocation. And so I think that, the value of any degree is really lies in a couple of things. One is clearly it's going to be easier to find something suitable in terms of employment from a degree that's one of specific technical qualification. And then two, I think those degrees have the kind of signaling potential that Caldwell refers to. So, I happen to be an experienced people manager, and I've hired a lot of college graduates, and my experience suggests that more than just a signaling device as to where someone went to college and which college they went to and what course they did. There are other elements of their life that can indicate whether they will be productive as an employee. For example, I find collegiate athletes who have done team sports much easier to put into a project-based environment with diverse teams and have them thrive and be productive. I also find that individuals who have encountered personal hardship, either kind of in a family setting or later on, tend to be hungrier, and so they're, it's easier to motivate them, and they tend to be the kind of people that will go the extra mile. So I think that, having the education, having the pedigree is one. So Caldwell concludes with an observation that there will be diminishing returns on a college education, and it's becoming more difficult to differentiate oneself if all you have is a college degree. What I personally believe, though, is that colleges and industry need to form tighter bonds with each other. There's we continue to import a huge amount of individuals from overseas countries into the United States because we were not able to forecast the demand of the technology industry, and that does not seem to be slowing down. Industry has a voracious appetite for things like data science and computational biology and statistics, and I've personally tried to hire these kind of individuals out of US colleges, and it's near impossible to find them. So, while I concur that the notion that some degrees do not represent a good return on investment. I also think it's completely oversimplifying to say that the American college degree doesn't prepare you for a life in industry. And here are my references. I referred to the original article from Chris Caldwell. I also referred to an article from Forbes magazine by Barr, the textbook, of course, Writing from Sources, and then an article in the Spruce, which is where the tables came from, and then finally the Pew Research Center, which is the rising cost of not going to college. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.